So thank you for coming to speak with us today. You'll be talking to our junior scholars who are a variety of students from freshman to senior, and we might have some other students as well that may have come from either URP and yes, and my name is Alejandra, and I am the Academic Advisor Program Specialist for PRISM, and Dr. Anthony Carpi is here as well, who is our Dean, and many other titles. So welcome, and thank you for coming to speak to us.
Fantastic. Very nice to meet you, everybody. Very nice to see some of you that we saw in our previous workshops. Thank you for making the time. We know you're busy. You're trying to get home, trying to finish some assignments. But making time to have community together is really important. So I really appreciate you all. When we have to talk about resiliency, right? And we are having students that are coming in and other stakeholders in the school. So we'll welcome them and give them a second or two, but we'll start with a presentation because I want to make sure that we have enough time so that you can ask questions if you have any concerns. Also that not only Dr. Carpi or the members of the school can address. I am very, very determined to help you out and connect you. We will probably also send an email with resources that you feel that you're needing, in addition to the resources that the school is providing. If you need clarification regarding some of the resources that are currently available, but you are concerned about using, or you don't know how to go about it, we can also accommodate for that. The important thing is for us to create a structure for ourselves where we can be, learners for the long term. We can also prevent burnout, and we want to make sure that you stay in the sciences and that you continue being scholars and you continue doing research and you continue giving yourself the opportunity to connect not only with each other, but with people that will be invested in your progress and your success so that you can stay in the field and you can stay in the sciences field because we need your particular point of view. We welcome your experiences and we hope that you continue to spearhead the changes that our society needs. When we're talking about resilience can feel like a very, very challenging topic to speak of because to begin with, why should I have resilience? Why are things easier? Why are not many of the obstacles that are presented in our careers as scholars, as human beings, and why aren't they being removed a lot quicker so I wouldn't even have to deal with it, right? So feeling certain resilience when it has to do with our need to develop resilience is totally warranted. So we will talk also about that, how to come to terms with some of the skills that we have to develop that are necessary, even though they're not fair. Particularly with students that are your age and come from your population, there is a lot of regarding social justice, equality, diversity and inclusion, and many of the structures that are in place right now feel very old, feel very unfair, and feel very unnecessary. So we're going to create a space for ourselves where there is always advocacy and we have the ability to show up for ourselves, but also we have the ability to manage the systems at the rate and at the place where the systems are right now. That does not mean that we in any way, shape, or form give up our power or that we give our willingness and our purpose to change these things around so that generations down the line don't have to manage some of the things that we manage currently. When we talk about ourselves as scholars, as eternal learners, we come from a place of strength, a place of power, but also a place where we acknowledge the need for self-compassion, the need to allow ourselves to ask for help, to position ourselves in a place where the people that can support us can learn in a way that is easier for them and more efficient for us about the things that we need. Some of us are here in the room from previous sessions. Some of you know me or know of me. So I'll just do a quick short introduction so that we are all on the same page. My name is Katie Simone. I am a clinical psychotherapist, and I specialize on the stressors of high of non-traditional backgrounds. So I specialize exactly in all of you, right? So I specialize in people that have high potential, they're high achieving, and people that are trying to build a life that has never been lived in many of their families. They're trying to build lives and they're trying to build professions that in many instances have never been had by anyone in their bloodline, going back wherever your bloodline, from thousands and thousands of years back. We're trying to create lives that even within the realm of the work that you are willing to do and you're going to do, whether it's in physics or biomedicine or whatever your interest in the science is, where these are places in institutional areas where they were not necessarily built for people like us. So we are doing all this work, not only for our bloodline. I sometimes introduce myself as Katie Simone, first of her name, you know, almost like in kind of a Game of Thrones kind of a thing, and first of her bloodline. I am also a doctoral student myself. So I am a long-term scholar. I am a doctoral student in the University of Alabama in the advanced clinical track. My interests are in migrational trauma, high achiever stressors, and community involvement. When we are sitting here thinking about our resilience, we want to start going at it from a place of decolonizing perspective. That is the place from where I practice. Whenever I practice, whether it's as a psychotherapist, I am also a university lecturer, and I also speak to different groups of high achievers throughout the country. I always practice and show up from a decolonizing perspective. And what does this mean? As a decolonizing practitioner, I go into space with the understanding that I am not the expert. I am the one that knows everything. I see the person or groups that I'm working with as the experts on their own experience. And I go with humility and personal humility to learn from all of you and create a place of joy and growth, growing from a place of learning from each other, and everyone is an expert in their own experience, right? So if we look at ourselves as an individual from a decolonizing perspective, one of the things that we do, and I think is the base of resilience that makes sense, not the cookie cutter resilience of I'm going to be strong and I'm going to endure, from the active resilience where we look at ourselves from a place of not only kindness, but also from a place of power, in where we are giving ourselves the kindness and the forgiveness that we many of times share with our peers, with our friends or family members. We are redirecting some of that to ourselves in order to build our resilience bank. How does this look like? We make a very firm stand in the process of learning not to pathologize ourselves. I think unlike many other practitioners where resilience is seen like all these skills that you learn, I believe that skills are important, but the most important part before we decide what skills are necessary is that we pathologize ourselves, our feelings, our symptoms, the way that we think about the world, and the things that can be hard, but that we need to work on, right? I work really well with clients and students when we start from the place of, I need to develop my resiliency. I need to be able to, let's say, for example, being that you guys are scientists and it's trial and error, and it's a lot of replicating different research that has been done, following directions, being teachable is very big, but being able to fall and get up again feels like is something that needs to be taken. When we go from the decolonizing perspective and the resiliency based on power, we look at ourselves from the place of like, what is the skill that I need to develop so that I can pursue this life that I'm trying to build for myself? So if we look at it from the space of, I get nervous making presentations, right? I get nervous when I'm asking for feedback. I leave things for last minute, or I don't organize my work appropriately. We go from the thing, we see it just as a symptom, as something that has to be worked on. We don't see it as I am disorganized. We don't continue going into that length of things for last minute. And there is something that I'm permanently damaged and it's always going to be forever. We recreate a narrative where we are like, this is the thing I have to work on. If every time I'm going to present, my hands get sweaty, right? And I have sweat going down my back, And God knows 2 days before I get a pimple on the same side every time. This is showing you that there is some anxiety that's coming up. So we don't be like, oh, look at my friend, she can present so well, or she knows all the words. We go to the place of, I need to improve my skills in public speaking. And when we pursue that goal, the resiliency gets built because you are allowing yourself from a place of positivity to look at this exactly like a task, like everything else that you have learned how to do, that sometimes you were a natural for, but sometimes you were not. Right? When we were little in second grade and third grade, they pulled out those multiplication tables. We all thought it was going to be over. It was over. 5 times 5 was easy, but when you start with a 7 times 6, that was just like all over the place. But what happened? We created a space for practice, for feedback. Some of you had flashcards. Some of you, your parents or grandparents or your caretakers sat with you. Some of you had to be restructured around your time so that you made the time to learn it, and eventually you learned it. So when we look at everything else, we're looking at it from a perspective of what is the task? What is the skill? There's something wrong with Kay. There's simply something that I have to patch up. The same thing goes for when you guys are doing an experiment, and there are many different elements. You're following the directions, sometimes it doesn't work. You don't go be like, oh, this experiment was a lie, it just never worked. You go back to your notes and you say, okay, what was missing? What was the element? What was the order? What was the process? When we are able to do this, then resiliency in strength and power looks a lot more doable. When we start looking at it from the perspective of not what society is pitching to us, right? Society is a big proponent of the gifted, the special, the quick, right? And it seems like everybody that is successful or that is published or has won research, it seems like they have this very easy road where things were just very quick for them. They just got it. They never got a C. They just paraded around the world, just prancing around, getting their little credits, getting grants, and life was beautiful because that's what society likes to portray as the road to happiness and success. The reality is that there's a lot of setbacks. There's a lot of tutoring. There is a lot of feedback. There is a lot of returning your paper so that you can redraft it. And if we are allowed ourselves to put ourselves in this position of it's a process and I can do it too, right? It doesn't have to be perfect all the time, but it has to be done. Then that allows us a lot better to be able to pursue the things that we want to pursue. When it has to do with resilience, there is also the part of justice, right? There are so many things that we have to do in the day-to-day intersectionally, whether because you're a woman or you're a male or you, based on the geographical place that you come from, based on the expectations of your cultural background, right? Where some of our cultural backgrounds are just 4 jobs that everybody should have. You should be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, and everybody else. Like, I think the first time when I started working with you guys, was the first time in my life ever. And I work in a lot of different schools and very competitive programs going from middle school, high school, and college. I think one of you guys was the first young student that ever said to me, I was like, oh, so what do you do? And just turned around so natural and said, I'm a scientist. I thought that was neat. I was like, that's it, drop the mic, you're a scientist. Like, you can be beat, like it doesn't get better than that, right? Because being a scientist, doing science is learning for testing, the laws of everything. It's testing efficiency. How do we get things better? How do we make people stronger, happier, better fed, all of those things? So even looking at this from the perspective of this a long-term situation, but that there are many obstacles, right? That sometimes hinge on our background, our income, how difficult it is to come from one place to the other, commuting, tuition, all these other challenges. Books sometimes are really expensive. A lot of things that we need to be resilient about. And if we look about it from the decolonizing perspective, when we look at these things, we have to give ourselves the permission little by little to start asking for help, to start putting ourselves in a place where our needs are known by the people that are here to take care of you. You are very rich, and we are very blessed for you to be in this program because you're pursuing these big goals, these big dreams, these big careers from a place of and of nurturing and support, from a place where you have all these adults that their sole job is to make you successful, to make sure that you are supported and that you have all the skills and all the connections that you need. Sometimes when we're thinking about resiliency, we might think, I have to do everything myself. I have to do it, and I have to be stronger, and I have to get it the first time I have to get it right. So we can be a little present, and we can start walking ourselves back from this premise and say, I'm being resilient by asking for help. I'm being resilient by asking for feedback. I'm being resilient by showing up as myself and helping the people that are here to help me know what are the things that I need. This could be very tricky, right? Because if you are a high achiever in your family, or you are known as the smart one, and the smart one always gets given all these other responsibilities, right? Because our families are trying to survive. They're also trying to push sometimes a lot of other children through the educational system. We have concerns regarding jobs and stability. So there's a lot of responsibility additional that comes for being the smart one, right? And you might be so used to doing everything yourself and having it to figure out and fill out your applications yourself. Sometimes there are issues with language barriers from our parents and caretakers. So we've been having to translate stuff since we're 5 years old and show up in appointments. And we're the one that is supposed to know about the FAFSA and where the grants are and how do I get the free Metro card. It's a lot of responsibility. And because you have been doing it for so long, this becomes your default. And when this becomes your default, it can be very hard to ask for help. So if we start looking at it from that perspective of, if you look at a famous person, right, we can talk about a famous scientist or a famous actress or singer or a sports person, even the president of the United States. What they have is something that we all have, but sometimes don't take advantage of. They all have a team, right? So we have our oldie but goodie Beyonce as the standard here. So when she walks out, she has a makeup artist, she has a massage person, she has a driver, she has the bodyguard, she has the singing instructor. There is a number of people. She moves a big part of the economy just herself. Her videographer, makeup, all of this, right? When you look at a CEO, when you look at somebody that runs a major lab, when you look at a team of researchers, there's always a lead researcher, but there's all the people around you, right? And part of developing our resilience is to see who's around us that is an asset, and how do we go about it, securing their support. And the way to do that is by being transparent about what we need so that they're better able to help us. If you are suffering in silence, if you're missing notebooks, if there is food insecurity at home, if your circumstances have changed in any way, all the people in the PRISM program are in a place where they can connect you with services, they can connect you with providers, or while you all figure it out together, can lend you a listening ear. Suffering in silence, needing things in silence are the type of things that set back your ability to move forward in your career and to be well emotionally and physically, right? So when we are talking about disclosing and asking for help, it can feel very, very uncomfortable. But if we use the colonizing perspective, then we can say that there is nothing that is wrong with you, right? What we have to see is that in the history of your life, when you are going to school or middle school, elementary school, high schools, many of times we have teachers that were very overworked, that were very, very overwhelmed. Many of people, if you didn't go to a specialized high school, many of times there was not the ability to secure tutoring or extra help from the teachers, and just items were just very scarce all around, right? So it was not necessarily the best thing to be super smart. It was very frowned upon in many settings to raise your hand and try to become a priority or to share too much, because the system was so overwhelmed by the amount of children that need to be serviced and the staff that was there and their lack of support or resources. Sometimes we transition to different settings and then we hold on to the rules and expectations that we had from before. When it has to do with the setting, being able to secure the help that you need is one of the building blocks of the resiliency, right? So resiliency is the ability to bounce back quicker from things that are challenging. Doesn't mean that life is perfect and everything is hunky-dory, but when things happen, it doesn't decimate you. It doesn't paralyze you for an extended length of time that prevents you from doing the thing that you're here to do. It doesn't prevent you for an extended period of time from enjoying your everyday life, right? When we're looking about asking for help, schools have a lot of different support systems. You have your counselors, some schools have counseling centers, therapy centers, there is the tutoring, right? But sometimes we can be the biggest obstacle in securing the services because we don't give permission to ourselves to partake in that. We're like, oh, we'll leave the tutoring for the people that really need it. Well, who really need it will be you, because if you just took 1 hour of tutoring, then you could handle it, be done. And then that's one less student within that cohort that we overwhelm at the end of the finals and the midterms, right? Oh, I don't need to go to the counseling center, or I don't need to talk to somebody when it has to do, about, life goals or stressors. I'm fine. There are people that are worse than me. They need it more, right? We are really good-hearted. We want to, safeguard the resources, and we want to always make sure that the resources go to the people that need it more. And many of times we decide, because remember, you're gifted, you're high achieving, you've been doing really good in school, you're the kid that gets no trouble, many of times you're the favorite for the teachers growing up, we leave the resources for somebody else. When in reality, if you were to tap into the resources as a preventative measure, you will need to go to a couple of sessions, get the skills that you need, and then it doesn't become something that is bigger and that is heavier for you to carry, right? We're like, no, Miss K, talking to students in person when I do events, I'm like, no, Miss K, I don't have any history of trauma, or I don't have anything that I need to talk to about. Okay, so let me go through the list. Your grandma died, your dog got lost, you take an hour in the train back and forth, which is very anxiety producing because there are sometimes certain characters. If you go really early in the morning, sometimes you're concerned for your safety. Sometimes you have family members, many family members that live in a different country that is not as safe or as economically advanced as the United States. So you always have that concern. Let me see, the holidays are coming and there is 3/4 of your family. I'm particularly from the Dominican Republic, so I use myself as an example. While the holidays are lovely, it doesn't escape me that 3/4 of my family lives in the Dominican Republic and I'm not gonna be with them. So you're missing out. When you're building a life that's never been lived in your bloodline for thousands of years, right? It is a very big weight that you carry because you make decisions and you navigate a world in a way that many times is really confusing for your family. The amount of hours you dedicate to school, the boundaries that you need to be able to study, how stressed you are about certain things. It is not a possibility for many of our parents and relatives to understand this because many of them did not complete college, period. And many of them were not in a highly competitive and so prestigious program as you are pursuing a career in science and math. So it is a very different ground where they're standing to understand our experience. So when you say, oh, I don't need this help, or I don't need that, I want you to start looking back to some of your experience, having to move from houses to houses. Sometimes our parents relocate us because there's a better house or more space. Sometimes our grandmas, go back to our original countries and then she used to take care of you all the time. The challenges of showing up to build a life that has never been built without having a model ahead of you that did that already, it is a very big stressor on your system, even on the days that you're not thinking about it, because you're having to do everything from scratch yourself. So when we say, there are these resources that are limited, I don't want to hog the resources, I don't want to be taking up all the tutoring, give yourself the kindness that you would give your best friend. Start talking to yourself the same way that you talk to your best friend. And if your friends say, oh, there is 12 problems in this homework, and I just know how to do 6, there's 6 that I'm having an issue with, would you tell her, well, you're gonna have to rough it out, you sit there messy until you figure out by yourself, or you'll say, oh, why don't you just go for tutoring for an hour? That kindness that we have for others, that space to be, we have to start making a commitment to ourselves as we are working on the end of this year and starting next year. So we start sprinkling a little bit of that for ourselves too. I know there is a lot of concerns when you say, how do I ask for help? How do I share without oversharing? I am a very strong advocate of no one is entitled to your story. And I want you to sit on that and think about it for a second. No one is entitled to your story. Sometimes because we have been raised in challenging situations, whether it's, let's say, financial insecurity, or we had involvement with a lot of the different systems that provide support and social services for our family and our household to have the things that we needed, we have this reaction that we have to automatically overshare. We need to overshare, we need to say all the details so they see it's true, so that they give us the help. But that can leave us in a place that's very, very vulnerable and very, very uncomfortable, which is going to then prevent us from asking for the help that we need. So how can we go about that? We go about that by assuring ourselves we are the experts of our lives, we are the expert of our experience, and we start with this little phrase that says, I don't owe anybody my story, right? I don't owe anybody my story. You don't need to give me the play-by-play, Jerry Springer, this one came, the other did, and then the popo came. We don't need that, right? I'm going to use, because you're next to me on the screen, Miss Chan, right there, because you're next to me with your plants, looking cute. Miss Chan has, her duties in the school. And as I said, every adult and every stakeholder that's here in the school, their absolute job is to make sure that you're resourced, supported, connected, and safe. That's their job. They have many job responsibilities and duties, but that's the mission at the top, is creating a space for scholars to pursue math, science, and be able to bring their light and their talents to the world today, right? So Ms. Chan does not need to know the play-by-play. I'm going to use an example, general example. So one of your parents has a boyfriend or girlfriend, stuff gets rough, there's some shuffling around, police come, now that person is kicked out of your house, and now we have food insecurity because now we have one salary less. Miss Chan and Dr. Ed do not need the Jerry Springer version. And he pushed her and then she pulled her weave and then the edges were snatched. They don't need any of that. Miss Chan and Dr. Ed need for you, when you gather yourself, to come to the office and say, there was a change in my family structure. And now there is a situation with food insecurity / my ability to get my book / my Metro card was misplaced. I want to know how you can help me. You don't need to open up yourself and share the shuffling and the police and then this one. We don't need to hear that. You do not owe your story to any adult in this room. But we do need to know what's going on, because if you need the Metro card and you need the extra book and you need to talk to us and you need an extension for one day to submit this homework that's going to allow you to stay in a B and not drop to a C if you didn't tell anybody what happened because it's late, we need to be able to be there to support you, right? So we need to decide how to create scripts for ourselves, right? We don't need to expose ourselves and all of the challenges that we might be having in our family, in our family of origin, but we need to be able to show up for ourselves without diluting our experience, right? We need to be able to show up, right? And we do that, we build that resiliency that is built on social justice. I don't want you guys to be strong for the sake of being strong. We don't need to be the perfect minority. We don't need to be the strong Black woman. We don't need to be the happy Hispanic woman or any other stereotype that are expected from us based on our cultural background and our heritage. What we want are scholars that are present, that are supported, and that we know in our hearts, the only way that Ms. Chan and Dr. Ed can sleep good at night, you know how good they will sleep? If you think about it, some parents, I have 3 girls, and they're also scholars like you guys. So for me, this is work that's really, really dear to my heart, because I have raised 3 Hispanic girls going through educational settings, having to develop their resilience and skills, but in tandem having to develop their ability to advocate for themselves. And the work that we've done together with them, as I am working with you, is first of all to give yourself the permission to ask for the thing that you need in a way that does not expose you. It does not leave you open. It doesn't give a bad name to anybody in your family, right? It is with working on giving yourself the permission, just like you do with your best friends, right? To use the resources. I would love for all of you, as we are finishing this semester, I would like to all of you to start thinking from the perspective of a lot of the high achieving students that do really well. They do really well because they put themselves in a place of humility and of asking for help. I'm going to use myself as an example, just like I like to do. So I'll share with you guys, I am pursuing my doctoral program, like I said, in the University of Alabama. It's a very, very competitive school. Hundreds and hundreds of people applied. And I applied and I said, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring too. I'm going to give you a couple of tidbits of why I shouldn't have done that. Número uno, yo hablo español. Spanish is my first language and is the language in which I did my undergraduate degree 20 plus years ago, right? So I am a Spanish speaker, a native Spanish speaker, and English is my second language. So just based on that, you know that academic papers are going to be a struggle, right? So yo hablo español was número uno, right? I am older. There's a lot of people that have a lot of energy, that have a lot of time, all these things, right? They know their computer, they know how to do APA 7, right? That would have taken me out right there. No, number three, I've been speaking English for 30 plus years, and I still confuse in, on, off. I confuse it, and at. Because in Spanish, you said en, en for everything. Yo estoy en la escuela, yo estoy en el bus. In English, it's like you're in, you're on, you're at. Still to this day, Grammarly is my best friend. I showed up, I applied, and I say, I'm going to apply, and if I get in, I'm going to do really well. Because my intention, which I made known in LinkedIn, I will be in the tutoring center all day, every day. I was like, shout out to the people in the tutoring center at the University of Alabama. When I got in, those hundreds of people, they took 20 people. They took me. I've been in the tutoring center, not playing around. I have a tutor to the tutor because I have given myself the permission to develop my resiliency within the tools that are available. I would like for all of you for next year to make it one of your themes is, I'm going to go to tutoring. Even when I don't need it, I'm going to show up, pop in, tell them what systems I'm using, right? How I'm doing this experiment things that you guys do. Is this the most efficient way? Do they have a trick? And I'm going to go and I'm going to show up and see what I can gather. I'm going to give myself to this, the ability to desensitize myself of asking for help. For next semester will be a lovely thing. If you guys look at your life and came up with one thing that you said, I want you to look at your body. When there is a skill that is missing, your body will tell you, right? Some of you have heard things like the body keeps the score, how or traumatic or challenging situations reflect in the body. So I want you to observe when you're having a situation, you're having a presentation, your hands get sweaty. Your throat gets dry. If you're talking to somebody you have some beef with, your throat starts getting a little tight. You might have some tension in the back of your neck. When somebody gets you really upset, some of us, our ears go red, right? Some people feel the heat in their hands because they're trying to, throw some hands, but we know better because we're not trying to live our life. We're scientists, okay? We're going to stay on the scholar side, but your body is in fight or flight or freeze at any given moment. And I want you guys, as you are navigating the end of the semester and going into the next semester, look at the body cues that you're receiving, because that will give you the clues that you need to say, you know what? I need to upgrade my skills when it has to do with public speaking. And we're not going to go from a 0 to 100 and be like, Miss Kay, I'm going to apply for a TED Talk, me all day, every day. But we are going to do deliberate small steps. And it could be that, you know what, I'm going to start listening to podcasts that have to do with public speaking. I might pop in a little TED talk that is relevant to science or something that's interesting just to see how they present. I'm gonna potentially, all of you lovers of TikTok and Instagram, maybe I'll Google something in, inside the Instagram or the TikTok, and then now your feed is going to be like people giving you tips how to be a better speaker. If you notice that every time there is a situation, you have a hard time holding people accountable, right? Because we're going to the next part of resiliency, looking into advocacy for self and not leaving yourself out. If you see that every time you have to hold somebody accountable, whether it's one of the members of your group, when they assign you assignments and you feel like you're doing all the work and they're just yellowing around, but you feel this tightness in your chest, the minute that you think about how to have this conversation from a place that is not aggressive, then I want you to keep a little tab on your phone, notes. What am I noticing in my body? Because that will tell you what is the skill we have to upgrade. You say, you know what, Ms. K, I need to be able to better advocate for myself and hold people accountable. Perfect. We don't have to go from 0 to 100. We say, you know what, I'm going to start doing a little research on boundaries. I'm going to do a little research on effective communication. Maybe I'm going to talk to Dr. Ed as he's doing his schedule for next year. We say, you know what, Dr. Ed would be really helpful because as scientists and researchers and mathematicians, you have to work in teams. You're trying to address the big problems of the world, and that is unlikely to be done by yourself in a little cubicle forever. Even if you come up with your own concept, you're going to have to expand into a team to be able, to run it and research and all of that. When you feel it in your body, you can create a task about it. You can talk about it. You can gather information about it in ways that are big and small until you develop the skill. It's very hard for me, to have a conversation that I don't feel that either I am aggressive or I am too passive. We use a decolonizing perspective and we sit back and we say, okay, what could have happened during my upbringing that taught me that confrontation is dangerous and is a liability? I will share with you what could have happened. If you were raised in the inner city, or there was a lot of challenges, or if you were raised in an environment where there was a lot of competition for resources, more likely than not, you never saw somebody in the flesh address conflict appropriately. We're either gonna do cold treatment, we don't talk to you, or we're gonna go into full conflict. We're about to throw some hands up in here. I'm trying to take my earrings off because I'm gonna show you today. I have my Vaseline in my back pocket and we're just gonna figure this out right here. That's all we've seen. It has never been the middle ground, right? Sometimes we watch, in the TikToks and the Instagram, there's this viral videos. There's always the lady that goes to McDonald's and asks for the 3 ketchups. And then the girl be like, I'm gonna give you 2 because that's the standard in the company policy. And the lady is like, you're gonna give me 3. Yeah, no, yeah, the lady jumps over the counter, pulls her by the hair comes off, she pulls her again, a whole fight over 3 ketchups. There is poverty, there's oppression, there is sadness, there is personal challenges, all of that goes into that. But one of the biggest part of that whole situation is that the customer never saw anybody deal with conflict appropriately. Exhibit B, this is how that's gonna play if I'm the one asking for the 3 ketchups. McDonald's, the fries, the dudes give me the shake with some onion rings. I'm just gonna go in because I have this $20 and this is what I'm going to say. She says to me, no, I can only give you 2 ketchups. And I'll be like, oh, but I really would prefer 3. Is that you can charge me for it? No, it's only 2 until she gets disrespectful. I'm gonna nip that right there in the bud because I'm gonna be like, what is your name again? She probably has a name tag, already saw it. She's going, well, my name is blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to say, you know what, whatever your name is, let's say Nancy, why not, Nancy? Say, you know what, Nancy, I would like to speak with your supervisor. Smile on my face, chilling, cool as a cucumber. Because if you're not able to do what I need and I am the customer, I'm going to escalate it. I don't have to throw hands at you. I'm not going to jail. None of this. I will not be caught in a viral video. Because when we cannot get into an agreement, I don't take it personal. I know that I just have to escalate. Supervisor comes over, let's call him Harry. Harry comes over, oh, what is the situation? I say, oh, hi, Harry. I am a usual customer of this McDonald's for the last 20 years, and me and Nancy are having a disagreement because I need 3 ketchups. And it's my understanding that the policy only allows for 2. So I want to see if you can make a waiver for me, being that I eat here all the time. More likely than not, Harry will give you the ketchup that you need. In the case that he doesn't, I'll say, well, that's very unfortunate how you're treating customers these days. Harry, as I am writing down his name, because he's going to be part of my complaint. What is the name of the general manager in this area? I would like his name and phone number. There is the difference. We have never seen that. We have seen either I'm going to cold stonewall you and keep all these feelings inside, or we're going to get, you know, the whole WWE situation going on where everybody's going to lose, right? So when we look at that from that perspective of why you freeze when there is a potential for conflict, a potential for feedback that you think is going to be disturbing to the other person, because you have seen it time and time again in your real life, on TV, on your feed, how a small thing derails people's lives forever. So many of the people that are right now part of the judicial system, there are many instances, but there's a big chunk of the population that created a situation or were part of a situation where conflict resolution was not in the menu. And they made decisions and they reacted and then they lost it, which I will explain in a little bit. What does that mean? I just walked out, I lost it. And then I woke up and this person was hurt or this bad thing had happened, right? In that split second, they put into jeopardy everything they've worked for, their health, their safety, their freedom. So we have learned since we're little that holding people accountable is a very bad idea, but we have generalized it for places and settings where it's safe to do that, in places and settings where if we did that, our peers will do their work better, our teachers will teach us better, and will be able to support us in a way that we learn and with the way of the things that we need to be successful. So when we say, I'm either too aggressive or I'm passive aggressive, so I'll be like throwing a little shade at you, like, but I'm not addressing the situation. So the situation is going to continue repeating itself, which is not efficient. And being that we're scientists, efficiency has to be at the top of the pyramid, right? So we say, I'm not good addressing challenges in communication. That's okay, because that's a skill that we can develop. And for this type of communication, there's also scripts. Just like there is a script that you can develop, so you don't open yourself up and share the nitty gritty of your life, or who disappointed you, or who parent is not there, or how this one ran away, nobody knows where they are. You can create a script for yourself to explain to others to the degree that you're comfortable about your life circumstances. You don't owe anybody all your story, but you don't have to leave yourself out, right? So when we think about resiliency, we have to look at it from building blocks, right? We're building blocks and we're setting ourselves with all of these skills that not only do we need here in school, in this program to get this degree, but that you need in life, at work, with your partner, when you create foundations, when you invent stuff. You need to have the resiliency that becomes power, not the resiliency that endures and just take it. Oh my God, Mother Teresa here, just suffering. No, we need resiliency that builds us up. Black Panther style, like that's what we need. We're creating all these skills, right? If we are able to develop our self-compassion and start allowing ourselves to ask for the resources, to ask for the help, to show up for ourselves. I showed up and applied to this program. There's hundreds of fabulous people. Hundreds and hundreds of fabulous people. This program is fantastic because of the school. They are a research one type of school, but better yet, this program is subsidized by University of Alabama football team, also known as they're made out of money. And this program costs 20% of what other doctoral programs cost. So obviously it was very competitive. I applied not because I said, oh, okay, it's a golden coin. Of course they're gonna take me. Everybody wants me, you know, like the guy from Lord of the Rings, Precious. I was not doing that. I sent in my application because I was showing up for me. For the little girl that I was that worked, you know, since she was really young, for the little girl that I was that went into a private school on a scholarship and had to win every single year the scholarship in that school because my family couldn't afford it. And if I couldn't afford it, I was going to lose all my friends. So winning a scholarship that they gave one per grade in that school was about the life that I was living. So I showed up and applied for a doctoral program for that little girl. I had no pretenses. They're going to take me. I'm so great, so fabulous. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And if they take me, I'm going to go to tutoring every day, all day, as you all know, buy every book, download every research paper, walk around with highlighters, right? Always have research papers in my car, in my purse, in my pocket, because if I have 5 minutes during the day, one of my clients is running late, listen to me, I have my little pile of research papers I have to read. I can move the ball forward. That's how I showed up. And when we are trying for all these things, we have to show up for ourselves. For that little kid that, unlike anybody else in their family and their bloodline, for the last 1,000 years, said, I'm going to be a scientist. I've never heard such a thing until I started working with you guys. I meet scholars every day. Nobody says with the pride that you say, I am a scientist. It's very impressive. So when we look at resiliency, I want you to, first of all, give yourself the permission to be upset about having to be resilient. Why is this not fair? Why doesn't everybody get the books? Why do I have to be so far? Why there's not enough? Why don't we have universal health care? You can be upset about all of these things. Trying to develop resiliency does not nullify the state of the world that demands of us having to be resilient, which many of times is not fair. But when we acknowledge our feelings are heard, and our feelings are heard give us the clues of what do we need to make it happen. Is it to show up for ourselves? Is it to dedicate time to create some scripts? Is it that your family doesn't understand what you're trying to do with this whole scientist math? Like, what does that mean? Like, what job you're gonna get? That's what many times our mom and my dads want to know. Yeah, this is cute, biophysicist. I don't know what this means. What job you're gonna get? And it is okay for us to take the time and create a script. So when we go in Thanksgiving to these meetings, and they're like, oh, you're still in school? You're still in school, and now you want to go to school again? As in now you're trying to do a master's or a doctorate, like, what job is that you're going to get? They need to understand, right? So it is okay for us to take the time and have the kindness to create a couple of one-liners, right? So that they understand where we're going. We have to acknowledge within the resilience that we're building, the friction that it creates who you are, right? And that's a heavy one, right? Who you are creates friction on other people, other peers. So maybe kids that were in high school with you and were not as fortunate or as skilled to go to this type of program, right? There might be some envy, there might be some haters, there might be some shading going on. We have to acknowledge this. We cannot pretend it's not happening. And we can grieve and be sad for this, because yet it's another burden we have to carry. But we can also learn from it by not ignoring it, right? You have big dreams. You have a life that you have never seen around you. Some people, oh, my dad is a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor. My dad is a scientist, so I'm going to be a scientist too. So easy. They know where to apply, what is the test you got to take, what classes to take during high school. Many of you have been carrying a really heavy burden doing this for a very long time. So it's not about you needing to develop resilience, because resilience you have tons of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You would have dropped out a long time ago. You would have gone to a different type of college. You would pursue a different type of career. Resilience you have. So what we need to do is empower this resilience from a place that creates access, protection, and network for you. When I was writing one of my papers for school, it occurred to me And I wrote it down because it sounded so cool that I was like, oh my God, did I just come up with that? No way, right? I was writing my, as I said, my interests are high achievers and non-traditional background, going into, careers that historically have been, red tape for primarily white people in primarily white institutions, right? So I was writing this paper and I was in the flow and I was talking and I said something that after I said it, I was like, oh my God, did I just come up with that? I said to myself, non-traditional high achievers and scholars do not pursue the American dream for the glitz and glamour. High achievers of non-traditional backgrounds do not pursue the quote unquote American dream for the glitz and the glamour. We don't pursue that because of, the Range Rovers and the bling bling and, Chipotle, with guac on it without even thinking about it. We pursue the American dream as a way for us to secure safety for ourselves and our families. It's not about the wheels, it's not about the white picket fence, and these are things that you are pursuing. You want to have a good job, well-paying job that has insurance, that's medical and dental, that has vacation, ton of things that nobody in our family has ever had. And you're not even pursuing that for the reason that most people pursue that, to be fancy, to be, with the in crowd. We are literally pursuing the white picket fence and the job with benefits so that we can create safety for ourselves and for ours. Because if I somehow manage to steer away from temptation, a shout out to temptation, right? Temptation to stay in bed and not show up to class, temptation to drop out, temptation to go into things that other people our age, AKA your age, are doing that are not conducive to being clear-headed and being a scholar and doing high-level thinking. Going to this party when there is this iffy crowd. We are dodging temptation all day, every day, right? We're doing all of that and doing this very tortuous, complex work that you do in all these high-level classes, pursuing the quote-unquote American dream for safety. And that is a totally different exchange of time and effort. We are doing this because we love the skills that we have, we love the path that we're following, we love the career that we're pursuing, but because we know that we managed to get from here to there, there is the highest statistical probability that our odds to be safe and be healthy and be provided for are going to be exponentially bigger, right? We're doing all these things. How do we show up better? How do we show up better for the person that we are becoming? By allowing ourselves to receive the help, to seek the support, to show up for the opportunity. People say, good luck with that. When I'm trying things for myself, for the kids, I'm always doing something, I'm always researching. I will find a program for one of my kids that is 5 years from when they can go. I have a little folder. I print it, I put it there. Because I don't have to remember, because now I print it and I have it, right? I apply for things all the time. And I say to myself, which is cute, I think, I'm going to blah, 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 where no Dominican has gone before. I'm going to this country. Of course, many of Dominicans have gone, but I just say that because very few of us actually go here, go there, go to Europe, go to Iceland, or show up or keynote speak in certain environments. And I say that acknowledging also the little Dominican kid that I was and that I am in some parts of my brain some days, right? We are doing things that have never been done. In order for us to be in a place where we have stability and stamina to show up, we need to resource ourselves. I've noticed I have a very hard time talking about my family dynamics. If there is, a parent or caretaker that is not in touch, or there was issues with substance abuse, or they just fell off the map and nobody knows where they are. Ignoring that doesn't mean that you're not carrying that. So when we think about what would be the most efficient way for me to deal with this? first of all, acknowledging this to yourself. You don't owe your story to anybody. Maybe I'm gonna, now over the break, I'll check out a book, I'll listen to a podcast, I'm gonna find an audiobook, I'm gonna write a little letter. We need to create a structure for us to put the things that we carry that are not ours to carry anymore, right? We have to figure out a structure. We have to figure out a process. When we think about developing resilience and we think about transitioning into science and math and tech jobs and all of these high aspirations, there is a lot of a term that is thrown around a lot, imposter syndrome. So we know that, little girl, imposter syndrome is everywhere. Because I was in this company and I had imposter syndrome. I am in this program and I had imposter syndrome. So thankful for us, there is a doctoral student from USC, Desiree Dixon, that has developed a completely, I'm in one of her cohorts. She is developing this modality as we speak, which is super exciting for the field of psychotherapy, where she said, nah, son, this is not imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome means that there is something in me that is making me feel that I'm not enough. And all of you that are sitting there on those chairs know there's nothing farther from the truth. This is not self-combustion that's coming from the inside telling you, I don't belong, I'm not good enough. This is not coming from within. This is coming from outside. So why is it imposter syndrome that's coming from me and I'm creating this additional struggle for myself, which is like totally society gaslighting you? Desiree Dixon came up with this new modality that she's developing right now at USC. It's called identity-based trauma. And I am part of one of the first cohorts that was trained in it. And what identity-based trauma does is doing the work to totally decimate imposter syndrome as not a thing. And it's repurposing all of these symptoms, all of these feelings, all of these thoughts, all of the negative cognitions that we have for ourselves as an environmental thing that was created by our communities, society, and the media, and even the companies and institutions that welcome us, because in small and big ways, they're telling us and whispering in our ear every day, shh, you don't belong here. You're an outlier. Oh, you speak so well for a Dominican. And no, but where are you really from? My favorite. I am from Queens. How about you? Imposter syndrome says there's something in you that creates these feelings. Identity-based trauma looks at the intersectionality of everything that you are, and then analyzes how is society giving you these messages? How does society prime your own family and your own friends to have these reactions and these views about who you are and what you bring to the table? So if I work, let's say, in a nameless tech company, and I have plenty of clients that work in all of the top tech companies and all of the pharma companies, and as part of their benefits, they get therapy for free, which is magical, with highly skilled therapists, and their companies pay for it. And if I'm in this vertical of thousands of people, and I am the only Black engineer in the whole vertical, and my supervisors are not culturally competent, even though there is always a DEI director, is it imposter syndrome or is it identity-based trauma the way that I feel? Because when I speak, I might be perceived as speaking too loud. Some people might pick up my signals on, how lively I am with my hands as being aggressive. Is that me that I think I don't belong, or is it you, your bias, your perception, and the way that you have structured the company that makes me feel that I am tokenized? So resiliency also is built from this knowledge that the things that you're feeling, you're not creating for ourselves. You're not creating more sorrow for yourself for no reason. There is a structural system that has, for centuries and decades and millennia, told people like you and me that we don't belong, that we are relegated until literally a few decades back to certain type of jobs in certain type of neighborhoods, in certain types of schools and careers. To think that I am old enough, obviously I was a lady, so I don't remember, but when I look at my birthday, I am almost old enough to be part of when the schools were segregated, when there was specific fountains you could drink from, and when buses that you could take, when there was all the redlining, when you had to do with the neighborhoods. And these were in the obvious ways. So to think that in the lifetime of a person like me, these things happen, it is a shocking thing, but it's literally, you could throw a stone and you could land there. So being who you are defies the things in the structures that have been in place for thousands of years. We are so blessed, especially you guys, because you're up and coming. We are so blessed to live in a chronological time where for the first time in history, people like you and me can show up and based on their skills, but not without a lot of work and challenges and obstacles still, pursue the thing that the heart calls them to do. You are the first generation that is deciding that they are going to need, and it's non-negotiable, work and life balance. You are the first generation that's showing up and is saying, I need benefits and I need leave of absence and I need maternity leave. All of these things were not even a thing 10, 15 years ago. You're holding people accountable, how they talk to you, how they treat you, and how they treat and talk about the community at large, even if it doesn't apply to you specifically. So just like it is this big responsibility, it is also this big, big opportunity. You get to decide what life looks like. You get to decide what a scientist looks like. So many of the careers, females were not even accepted. They couldn't apply, they could never get the job. There was always a problem, right? You guys are showing up and saying, bringing females into the science, allowing females, fostering the female brain in the science path makes us all better, makes us all stronger. And there is as much support from the males as there is from the females that want to join it. And that is a beautiful thing to see. When we look at resiliency and we look at it from the place of kindness to self, advocating for self, learning how to hold other people accountable, learning how to communicate, understanding identity-based trauma so that you can be more kind with yourself when you show up for this great opportunity and your hands are sweaty, when you're doing this presentation and maybe you stutter a time or two, you can have that kindness. So it's like, wow, yeah, I stuttered 3 times. Wow, that was a big deal. I am where no Dominican has gone before. When you get comfortable with your accent, if you haven't, and stop over-explaining yourself. I repeat a phrase all day, every day. However, if you want to understand me better, we can switch to Spanish or Italian because I got you. But being that you have your limitations and you only speak English, we'll stay in English and we'll do the best that we can together. But this is not about to become my liability, my limitation, right? So when we start looking at things from that different perspective and delay the process of internalizing everything that happens, internalizing every negative thing that people say or that people think, but we start being centered on our value in what we bring to the table, resiliency can grow. We don't want resiliency just like, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna be strong, I'm gonna take it. No, we're gonna deal, we're gonna take it, but we're also gonna show up for ourselves, we're gonna upgrade our skills, we're gonna ask for help, we're gonna hold you accountable because I am holding myself accountable every day. Every time I wake up, now it's 30 degrees, every time I get up from that bed, and some of you get up from that bed to get in that subway, that God knows who's gonna be sitting next to you, what they're eating, how they're smelling, what they're talking about. You showing up for your dream. You're holding yourself accountable. We're going to do that for everybody else. We're going to create scripts to explain to others the things that we need to create alliances from the people that care and that are there to nurture you and support you into your biggest self. We're going to give ourselves the opportunity to show up. We're going to give ourselves the opportunity to gather knowledge on the things that we need to improve on the skills that we want to develop. And we're going to give ourselves the space to do it little by little. A little podcast here, a little TED Talk there, a little conversation with ourselves, with somebody else, a little letter that we're going to write, right? We're going to be very mindful. How does our body feel when doing certain things? And if certain things are necessary for the job and the career that you're pursuing, it is okay not to be a natural at them. You have time. You have time to develop it. You have time to practice. You have time to ask any of your stakeholders and your caretakers here in the school and say, you know what, Ms. Zamora, I find that I have a really hard time keeping time and procrastinating for the last minute. And she might be like, oh, so glad you asked. I have this little tool or this little app, or there is this coach person, or follow this account, or come into my office. I'll connect with somebody that will create a structure and a schedule for 30 minutes that you can take with you and use as a template. Oh, you're having a hard time figuring out. Okay, so do you have the link for the tutoring? Schedule the tutoring and show up. And once you show up once, show up again with a different tutor to see if it works. Oh, I tried, Ms. Kay, I tried once. I went to this tutor and I knew more than him or her. That is a possibility because you're all very smart. And also these kids need these jobs because then the work study doesn't work out. So it might be they match you out with somebody that's not in the level that it should be. But the fact that you show up regulates your nervous system. So we were talking about before about, oh, there's a conflict and some hands get thrown and bad things happen. And the person always says, I don't know, we were arguing and I blacked out. They actually blacked out. When you're in a high level of conflict, there are parts of your brains that actually get shut down, right? When you're in an argument and you're fighting with somebody, your digestive system gets shut down immediately. And your body stops a lot of the systems in the body that are not necessary for the task at hand, AKA fight to survive, or that will slow you down in the case there is an altercation. Parts of your brain that gets shut down when you get to that place are the places that have to do with keeping memory and being able to like understand what's going on. Parts of the brain that get shut down are the parts that have to do with clarity of decision making and looking at consequences, right? So when they say, oh, I was not all day, I don't know what happened, I don't know what I did, many of those people are realistically telling the truth. Their brain shut down, they blacked out, they don't know what happened because their brain shut down a bunch of parts that were not necessary for the fight and survival and put everything else. The adrenaline, the getting pumped, I'm going to be fast, I'm going to be reckless, all of those things get turned on, right? So when we look at ourselves from that place, it's like, what is my body asking me for? What are the clues that is my body giving me? How am I creating a structure for self, in self-care, in self-help, in the help and support of the system that you're part of, that puts me in the best place to succeed with the less investment of effort and stress? Is it reaching out? You guys are very privileged because you have a lot of different events and stuff, and they have the food and they have the talks and they have the come and write with us and all of these different things, right? Am I putting myself in a position where I am taking advantage of all the things? Do I even know all the things? It could be that over the break could be a good time for you to start looking at support services and tutoring and trying to get connected with services when it has to do with having somebody to talk to or a therapist, or if you want to go through your insurance, figuring it out. It could be that you join a circle of sisters or a circle of brothers. It could be that you start following people that are nurturing back the community and giving pointers. And as you're doing that, resiliency doesn't look like perfection. It looks like showing up every day. It looks like showing up most days. And if you didn't show up every day, having the strength and the presence to reach out to the place or the event or the group or the class that you didn't show up to and share what happened without making yourself too vulnerable, which will make you totally not show up and ghost the whole class, and the professor doesn't know what you're doing and what you didn't miss. You know, why didn't you show up or you missed the class, right? We have to depathologize ourselves. We have to gather those resources that we need. We need to show up for ourselves and create routines of whether it's self-care or mindfulness or drawing, or some people like doing their nails, or now with the deep conditioning with the hair, or just being in community and keeping tabs of that. Planning in advance. If planning in advance is not your strong suit, go over to one of your teachers, one of your professors, one of the staff. Listen, I'm having a really hard time planning in advance. Do you have any skills or any advice? They might come up with something on how to plan your break, how to put yourself in the best position possible. You have to remember, many people have a parent or an uncle or somebody that's doing that for them. But if you don't have that in your life, it is okay to find that person within your network. Sometimes feels so overwhelming, right? Oh, I'm going to be a senior, then I have to get a job. Okay, so let's get a LinkedIn going and put a picture and start making connections. And if your assignment for the week is to make 2 connections and follow one foundation or one research institute, that's enough, because your brain is going to calm down, right? Everything we do is to regulate our nervous system. And it's not the nervous system like, oh my God, I'm nervous. It's the biological nervous system that runs your body, right? And what happens when your brain's only job is to keep you alive. So that's when you are doing something that you don't know how to do, or that you need to upgrade your skills in, your brain goes in overdrive and you get, the sweaty armpits, and then your hair be falling, and like all kinds of stuff happens because your brain is like, we need to upgrade this, you need help, we need to know how to do this, or we need to figure out how to do it better. If you're efficient and listen to that the first time around, the second time around, and show up and looking for the help or looking for the information, your brain brings the alarm down. And when your brain brings the alarm down, so many other parts of your brain are engaged in clarity and speed, right? So when you look at that, it's like, okay, how do I build my resilience? My resiliency is by building my skills. It's by showing up for myself. It's by being mindful and observing my body when I am talking to certain people, when I'm pursuing certain goals. What does it say? How does it look like? How do I make it better? Not perfect, but I can make it better. And what does that look like? Right? Do I have an itinerary? Do I have a routine? Do I have rituals of how I do things? Right? I, for example, love vapor rub. So as a good Dominican, I love me some vapor rub. So I have vapor rub on my desk. I have a vapor rub in my purse. When I start getting a little nervous or a little out of sorts, I have my mindfulness techniques that I practice. I have my super short meditation that I can do in 2 minutes. And I have my vapor rub. And I'll be like, vapor rub in the back of my neck. Smells like my grandma. It makes me feel calm. You have to tweak it. You have to figure out how to make it work for yourself. Remember that because you are gifted, because you are very inclined to the sciences and the math, you are the quick kid, the kid that never gave trouble to the teacher's favorite. You probably were given a lot of responsibility and a lot of tasks. Let some of that go. Put it down. Now that you have this help and you have these people in your life that are there to mentor you and to see you through in this path, give yourself the time to take a breather, to accept their support, to accept their light, to ask for what you need. And you can start with something really small. Desensitize yourself to asking for help. Desensitize yourself for showing up for yourself. Do one tiny little thing about the thing that you know you have to be better at. Small thing. And once you become the person that's prioritizing that thing, your brain is going to say, oh, it is safe to show him or her what we need. It doesn't mean that we're going to be on positive psychology, smelling rainbows and cupcakes every day. We're going to have good days. We're going to have hard days. We're going to have days that we don't know if they're good or they're hard, and they're all mixy and even throw us off more than the good or hard days. But if we show up with the intention to show up for ourselves, it's a lot easier for the universe to deliver the mentors, the help. It's so much easier for the universe to deliver you the way. Many of you, if not most of you, showed up into these programs and you're like, listen, I'm going to sign up in this thing and I don't even know how I'm going to make it. You showed up and it's like, oh my God, everybody's so smart and they're smarter than me and they can do it faster and I can do it better. You're showing up every day. You're learning from each other. You're showing up every day and you are not only bringing light into the world, but showing possibility. It's a big responsibility, but it's a responsibility that can be done. And it doesn't have to be so challenging. It doesn't have to be so stressful because you have all these people here. You have resources. You have me. So anything that is a concern to you that you bring up to Dr. Ed or to Ms. Zamora or to any of your professors, you guys have allies, you have advocates, you have people that are showing up saying, oh, we have to do events. What do the kids need? What would they like? How can we bring some joy into their lives? They know how big this challenge is. And they, as they say in the hood, they got you. They got you. They're ready. They're like, coach, tap me in. I'm in. What do you need? How do we figure it out? Together, we can figure it out. Because at the end of the day, it's just remembering that you're the expert in your life. It's remembering that you deserve good things. It's remembering that you are worthy, that you're valuable, that just by your pure existence, you're changing the world. Being a scientist and showing up as who you are and where you come from changes the world, changes people's perspectives, and creates the path for you, for safety, for joy, for affluence, for being able to give back, not only to our immediate family, but to the people around us, the little girls and the little boys that look just like us, right? They'll be like, oh, wow, look at the scientist girl. She's from Brooklyn, right? That is you guys every day. It's not denying the big weight in your shoulders and how it is unfair in many instances that you even have to be resilient. We should be in a place in the world now where you just had access and you have the things that you need and the shoes and the calculators and the books, and it shouldn't be this whole, you know, running around and trying to make things happen. But we can accept our anger and our frustration with those things. We can still show up and figure out what is the loophole. That's what you do. You're scientists, you're mathematicians. You're about stamina and resilience and figuring out the answer, going about it in many different ways. So how do we find the code? How do we find softness? How do we find access for you? It starts by first you allowing yourself and start saying, so you're going to show up today and be like, I am worthy, if you don't feel that in your core right now. But you can change the affirmation into, I can learn to see my value, right? It doesn't mean like, oh, I am the best and I'm the top. Some days you are. Some days the affirmation has to be, I can learn from my mistakes. Sometimes the affirmation is, I'm the best scientist uni has ever seen. Whoop, whoop. Some days is that. And some days is, I am resilient and I can learn from my mistakes. It's the same coin. Sometimes it has different sides. But we show up for ourselves. We show up for each other. We go to tutoring. We ask for help. We listen to the podcast. We are in the hustle. And this life that you're building is gonna come true. I show up every day and I say, I want the world and everything in it. I want the world and everything in it for myself, for my kids, for my patients, for my clients, for my students, for my schools, for the accounts that I work with. Because once you see that possibility of what is possible, we can create a blueprint to get it if we create small tasks, if we have small asks, if we desensitize ourselves to feedback, if we desensitize ourselves to having to ask for help, not in the way of like, oh, I don't feel it, it doesn't matter, but you don't internalize it. Needing something doesn't make you needy. This is just one moment in time. Okay, so I thank you so much for staying here with me, for listening. And I would like to hear if anybody has any questions, if there are certain things that you guys are interested about, so that I can send Dr. Ed some resources. If you wanted to do meditations or worksheets, anything that you can think of, I will take note, and we will definitely get together and do something that could be helpful of resources and skills.
Hi, Dr. K. I'm future Dr. K.
Yes, get those credits, get those credits. Yes.
Yes, we are actually, I just wanted, before you go into questions, because we're running low on time, and I know a few of the students are gonna have to go to class. First and foremost, I wanted to thank you for talking about this topic with us. We are all here, actually, we have the full office. We've been sitting around drinking some cafecito and listening to you.
Thank you, Jesus, for cafe.
And then to everyone else, have a great holiday weekend. I hope you can stay and answer some questions that I know that we have from the students in the chat. And also, if you guys want to ask them, can you stay for 10 more minutes?
Oh, I'm here. I'm good. I blocked the afternoon for y'all.
Excellent. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to turn on your camera and or mic.
For all the students also, they can email you the questions, or you can send Dr. Ed a little email. And if they want to just send the feedback directly to you, I'm more than happy to put a little blurb of stuff together, of resources for free therapy, for podcasts that are helpful, a couple of accounts that are really good for high achievers and non-traditional backgrounds to follow. And just for us to show up for each other and be present. I think, especially the adults in the room, you're doing a fantastic job at holding space and holding the hand of these young women and men that are going to change the world. And it's a challenging time, but it's the best time to be alive. It really is. I'm really excited for what is to come, especially through programs and people like you that show up for students, to show them that they belong, that their voice and their light is something that we need in the world.
So I don't see any questions, but
okay.
The one thing that I will say is I'm going to post your website on Blackboard, so anybody can find your contact information and information about your company. And Amanda, I have instant coffee, powder milk, and water. So if you bring your cup, you can come and have cafecito with us.
Oh, if Amanda said if it's free, it's for me.
Vente.
Very nice to see you all.
Amanda, vente.
And then for the professors also, if you want to connect with me in LinkedIn, it's KD Simone at LinkedIn. I always welcome connections with people that are in the field making this work happen, but also any feedback that you have, any things that you have noticed, any research that you think is relevant. I'm always available, and I love connecting with people that are doing the good work in the field. Hopefully for the spring, I'll be able to see you in person. So ahí me doy el cafecito. I can do the cafecito for free too. And we'll figure out stuff. So thank you so much, Dr. Ed, and just in general to everybody for inviting me. It's always delightful to partake with you and your staff and your students. I speak of all of you really highly, and I always tell, like, I have scientists that I see, like, you're all cute, like you're cute here and you're Yale, whatever. I have scientists, like the level.
Excellent. Well, everyone have a good holiday weekend, and we'll see you next week for next week is
Speaking Truth to Power.
Speaking Truth to Power with Georgiana Holder. So bye, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Ed. Bye, guys.